We just open with that. Nah.
Okay. No, let's do it. Okay. So for context, we had a conversation over email just yesterday about an event that I've just come from, which was an interview. I interviewed Sinead Boucher from Stuff. And I said, why don't you come along? And Ryan said, no, I avoid networking events like the plague. And I said, right, we have to talk about that. And I feel like I'm going to play the role of interviewer for a moment.
Yeah, okay.
Ryan, why do you not like networking events? Or what in your mind, where does that come from? Where does that attitude towards it come from?
Well, essentially, I, for the longest time, made the mistake of trying to balance out my weaknesses instead of double downing on my strengths. So people petrify me. Mm-hmm. So I did commission selling, talked to 40 new people every day, did it for years, went to networking events, even part of a group that would help men communicate better with women.
Wow.
We would go out and hold each other accountable to start conversations, and been to endless networking events. And I would consistently either go straight to the bathroom or just not talk to someone, and then sometimes I would, and just realize it's not a good use of time. So I can reach 400,000 people a month on social media. I can choose who I want to hang out with in terms of networking. So it's just a focused approach.
Those contacts that you do reach out to on social media, would you say they're as meaningful as meeting someone in person?
Well, it is meeting them in person.
Okay.
It's just the facilitation of that connection just wasn't in person first.
Okay.
But funnily enough, there is a sense of knowing someone. Like I met a guy, Avanesh, not too long ago, interacted with each other's content for 6 months and then met and sort of knew each other. So like this sort of thing, like sitting here and having an in-depth discussion about your life and where you're at and genuinely being interested in it, outside of all the noise, I think it's incredibly powerful.
So what is it about the networking, and maybe it's the word networking, what you see as the dirty part? Like what about it isn't or doesn't have the potential to be just like this, a meaningful conversation?
Yeah, so I think the word dirty is probably coming from the fact that I said I avoid it like the plague.
Mm-hmm.
It's more to say that I've recognized that's not my strength. I can do it. You know, I've learned meditation. I've learned how to navigate my fear. I know how to sort of be at ease for the most part in a social setting, despite how I might feel. But if I go there, it's not as efficient. And then you go there and then they're trying to sell you something, especially if it's a business networking event. They're always like, oh, here's my product. Cool. My name's Ryan. You know, what are you doing with life?
I would say that approach is quite outdated. I certainly have not been to, I mean, I suppose it does depend on the event, right? What is the quality of the event? Who are the people that are going to be going there?
Yeah,
and the types of events where people are selling something is a minority. A networking event is purely a reason or opportunity to connect with people like we've been doing. So I'm curious to know what part of it did you not find, what part did not align with your strengths, so to speak?
I just find it confronting. So essentially, to me, it sounds like standing in front of an empty terrain and trying to traverse it, and there's all these dangers along the way. That's what my subconscious feels. And then I wouldn't necessarily interact consistently. Whereas here, 100% interacting with you. And then with social media, I could leave 100 comments on people's posts and then lead that to facilitate it.
So in my mind, correct me if I'm wrong, you see them as a superficial, where you're not really connecting with anyone. It's just the mass. It's they're there in the masses, and it's not actually about connection.
No, it's not so much that. It's more. I'm just. I'm fearful in that environment.
Okay.
And
Fearful of what?
Well,
this is not turning into a counselling session, by the way.
Well, I'll answer it like a counselling session, which would be not feeling deserving of others' love. Like the underlying belief that if I expose myself, people will leave me.
Okay, so the fear is that you will get into a conversation, again, correct me if I'm wrong, you will get into conversation with someone and start talking and sharing about what you're about, and that they won't be interested in that, and that they will walk off and go and talk to someone else, leaving you alone at the event. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it was sort of, it's more the first interaction. So if I'm going to go talk to someone, that part,
Yes.
I'm like, oh my fucking God.
Okay.
And then the first few seconds when I'm trying to land,
Okay.
like when I haven't centered myself, that's
And what's your
petrifying.
approach?
I usually go for the stragglers because it's less intimidating.
What list?
The stragglers.
Stragglers. Who are they?
The people on the corner, just like the introverted IT person, you know what I mean? Just fucking beeline for them.
Yep.
And then I'd also go through a process of it's called social momentum. Okay. So you incrementally expose yourself to social encounters to get momentum and then progress. Because if you're getting positive feedback along the way, so find the straggler, talk to them. And then when you're with them, you can merge it with someone else.
So are you taking them with you to go and meet other people? So you're kind of building this posse as you maneuver or move around this event?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're hosting your little party.
What is this? Let's say the straggler isn't there and they're a group of typical networking professionals, varying backgrounds, but of that group that you would not typically tend to approach. If you had to approach them, what would their opening line look like?
I find situational openness are good. Even just proximity in between talking, because I learn how to sell from analytically understanding what I need to do. Because if you're in the stress zone, it's fearful. So situational opener, someone's walking around looking for something. You're like, oh, how's the hide and seek going? I can help you find them. Or, there's people talking, you just come in proximity and then, you wait a certain period of time and then you introduce yourself. So it's more of a soft landing. It's not really hard. Essentially, you could storm in, be rude and mess it up and then adjust. It doesn't matter too much.
Well, that's why I asked, because 60 to 80% of your first impression that you make, which would then contribute to how well that interaction then unfolds, has nothing actually to do with what you say. So there is a tendency to overemphasize, oh, my opening line, what am I going to say? But actually, on that note, a great opening line that I use all the time when I go to events, because I always intentionally go to events. I shouldn't say always go to events. I often go to events by myself with the intention to meet people. Well, actually, let me backtrack slightly. Here's a few strategies that are going to help make it easier and make it seem less confrontational. Firstly, when you arrive, stand on the outskirts of the area or the event and survey the scene. So take everyone in, think, who is potentially a person worth me talking to? So you're just absorbing the room, maybe getting yourself a drink in the process. You will only look like a loner if you choose to look like a loner. So watch that posture. Stand there confidently. You're there with purpose. Then you might spy someone you want to talk to. Commit to them. Confidently go and walk up to them. And your opening line is, hi, I don't know many people there. My name is Ryan. Boom, you're in. And immediately the conversation will unfold. That works beautifully because often the person you're approaching would never have the guts to do the same. And they're thrilled to have a reason to talk to another person. Regardless of your background or how confident you consider yourself are in those situations, that will get you into the conversation with a good person. And then the rest is about that connection. So that's what I would recommend. And then obviously, you're a great conversationalist, so I don't see you having any issues with then getting the conversation moving and asking questions. The reason networking is so important is because as in this modern world, you can't get ahead without a diverse, authentic, meaningful network. Now, obviously, you've made reference to your network outside of the realm of networking at events, which is great because networking at events is only one avenue through which you can network. There's also, as you've said, posting online, building a community online. You can also do these things called informational interviews, which we can talk about if you want. But so there's lots of different types of networking. But as a principle or as a starting point, it's incredibly important because there's this guy, because of the idea of something called pie. Now, pie is not that fruit-filled pastry dessert, and we're not talking about 3.145926.
Oh, watch out.
We're talking about...
I'll do the whole thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I could keep going. No, I couldn't. It took me a lot just to memorize those ones. In fact, I'm not even sure if I got it right. But
It was close. It's 3.14 something. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. So there's this guy called Harvey Coleman, and he wrote a book on this. But essentially, the idea of PI, well, it stands for performance, image, and exposure. Performance is, or refers to, the tasks that you complete, the work you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. It's kind of what's in your job description. It's the results you produce. So that's performance. Image is how other people see you. Are you upbeat and positive? Do you go over and above for clients? Do you have a great dress sense? All these kind of things.
No.
It's give yourself more credit. You're good, you know.
Yeah, there's hope.
And so it's so our personal brand. It's other people's perception of us. The scary thing is whether that perception is accurate or not is actually irrelevant. And lastly, exposure is who knows you and what you do. Does your boss's boss know you and what you do? Do people in other departments know what you do? Do people outside of the organization know you and what you do? What's the relevance of this? Well, ask yourself, where do I expend most of my energy? Is it on my performance, the results I produce? Is it on my image, my personal brand? Or is it on exposure, the extent that I'm known? If you're like most professionals, most people overemphasize the role performance plays in professional success. So if you can imagine a pie chart that is made up of the three key factors, performance, image and exposure, what percentage, and that pie chart as a whole represents your professional success. Take a guess at what role performance plays.
10%.
10%. Yeah. Only 10%.
Is it?
It is.
Hey!
Why not? I'm impressed.
Yeah, you can't perform in the dark. Who cares?
Yeah. Well, it's just to say, stop obsessing over optimizing the nth degree of performance. Get outside, make a good impression on people, and get known, which is essentially what networking is. Your exposure. It's the extent that you are known, that network around you. So that's why it's so important. I would encourage you not to shy away from events, because actually that's where a lot of growth happens. And it sounds like you are a seeker. You've obviously got a growth mindset with a lot of other avenues. To put it differently, one way I think of events is in terms of limited downside, unlimited upside. So what I mean by that is when you have an opportunity to attend a networking event, and you don't even have to call it a networking event. You just call it an event, right? Because there's always a chance to network. You can think, okay, the downsides here are all limited. Well, I know roughly how much time it's going to take. It's probably going to cost me this much. I might have, be this tired tomorrow after having a few drinks, whatever. Those downsides are limited. The upside, unlimited. Who knows who you're going to meet? You can meet someone that ends up becoming your new boss. You can meet someone who ends up coming on the podcast. You can meet someone who introduces you to someone else. You can meet the love of your life. Who knows? So just changing that mindset of, limited downside to unlimited upside. Because quite frankly, if you want to succeed, you have to show up, and that is half the trouble, because most people don't. So if you can, then you're already ahead of the game.
Cool. All right. Bailed me up. Like it. I think it's important as well, because I have a tendency to rabbit on for 30 minutes and then no one knows the context of why we're talking like this and who you are. There is something you said, and I like the quote, "Style is more important than substance initially."
So say that. Did I say that?
No, I'm just relating it.
Sorry, say that again slowly.
Style is more important than substance initially.
Style is more important than Yes, okay, so that's talking about that initial impression,
P.
right?
Not the P.
No, the I.
The I, sorry,
I.
yeah, I failed you.
Hence the reason to make that initial approach and make a good impression, right?
Yeah, and body language, tonality. Like if someone's talking really slow and you're going real fast, like what are they going to think?
Yeah. Well, actually, that's an interesting one, because if you're, as a conversation partner, if you're entering a conversation, you do tend to want to match the mood and tone of that person. So it's interesting as a female, and I don't want you to lose track of where you were going with your thought just before, so hold on to that.
Like, who are you? Why are we talking about this?
No.
It's an important thought.
But just, as a female, as an executive coach, sorry, I should not say executive coach because that means other things in different circumstances. Executive public speaking coach. I'm operating or working with executives who do tend to be mostly men at the peak of their career. But then I also go to a lot of events and interact with a lot of, obviously, non-executives. So just all parts of the whole spectrum of personalities. And I'm conscious that when I interact with, say, the assistant of whom is going to set me up with a meeting, and if she does tend to be a she, is really animated and then I'm upbeat and I'm like, hey, how's you doing? Do you have a great weekend? Oh my gosh, it's so good. Isn't the rain outside terrible? How you been? How's it? Blah, blah, blah. And so you meet their mood. Whereas when I go into that session with that executive who's just come from a board meeting, who's under a lot of stress, then I match that mood. So that's a little technique that's worth doing, because people like people who are like people. Yeah, people like people who are like them.
Or who they want to be.
Is
it the Tony Robbins quote?
I don't know.
He loves saying that. Style is more important than substance initially, is him.
Yeah, okay.
But I hear you, mirror neurons. There's a cluster of neurons in
Yes.
your brain that, when I eat a lemon, you probably feel a certain way about it.
Oh, yeah.
So
actually, that's interesting, yeah.
And there's entrainment, so we used to do that. So that was a big turn. And we got to talk about who you are right after this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But, that was a turning point for me. So, my body language was all closed off. I was very fearful talking to people. So, mirror neurons or pacing and leading was very important. So, where you mirror a person's style of pace, how they communicate, showing empathy to that. And then if you make a big movement or something like that, they'll start copying it, which is quite interesting. They did that with Nice Guy and an Arsehole, where he would be a dickhead, and they wouldn't copy him. And the nice guy, when he'd put his hands behind his head, then they would copy him.
Interesting.
And that happens with humans, is that they either start walking the same pace, breathing the same pace, talking the same pace. So you can reverse engineer it by doing that at the start to build rapport.
Interesting. Yeah, I came across that in the context of interviews, job interviews, and that it's a technique you can use to match the body language and, particularly body language with of your interviewers. Now, obviously, you don't want to start mirroring every typical position as I'm doing here, copying your stance, because they'll probably see through that. But just the slight gestures, whether they've got their arms crossed, whether they're leaning back in their chair relaxed, or whether they're leaning forward, matching that relates to what you were saying. What were we going to say?
We were going to talk about you now. So, who are you? What do you do? Why are we talking like this?
Well, that's interesting, because I've just
You're new woman now?
I'm a new woman. No. I'm still doing what I'm doing, but I'm going to give you my elevator pitch version.
Oh, yeah.
Which is what I use at networking events, just sticking with that theme. And that is, I help top performing teams and individuals overcome the challenges of public speaking to achieve their professional goals, which essentially means I'm a public speaking coach. I do tend to work mostly with executives, but I also run in-house corporate training for teams, so that would get a variety of professionals in that, one-on-one coaching, executive masterclasses, interview preparation coaching, and I've just started a strategic speaking online course, which is targeted at that pre-executive level for new and aspiring leaders.
Scalable.
That's the goal? Is it the goal? Yeah, it's funny. I get asked that questions a lot. How are you going to scale? Because it's just me at the moment. I've somewhat got a couple of people helping me in some ways, but really it's just me. So I don't actually know if I want to scale. In my mind, that would look growth for me would look like me upping my prices and just getting better clients and doing more international gigs, as opposed to bringing on coaches, training them so I can do less. I don't want to do less coaching. I want to do more coaching and less, I don't know, sales and writing of proposals and invoicing, which I am doing less of now, thankfully, because I have an assistant. But
oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like there's most people they're trying to, either meet other people's expectations or make a certain amount of money so they can fill the emotional void. So at the end of the day, like, we're all gonna die, and you're gonna have this big business that you hate, like, whatever. If you want to just speak and travel around the world, that's cool.
Yeah, I love that you are so open about the fact that we're all going to die, because that freaks people out. But it's funny because I talk about that with my husband often, and we say, oh, we're all going to die anyway. And people hate that. It's like, death is still such a taboo, but it does. It's quite a confronting thought. Like, what do you actually want to do? Where do you want to spend your time? What actually makes you happy? Do you want to sell your soul to a large corporate? No, then move on.
Yeah, never. Me and bureaucracy. I worked at McDonald's for a trial. I tried to change the system, and they didn't want me.
How old are you when that happened?
Like 18.
Awesome.
But I got free food. So.
I hear that's a good selling point that they include that in the package deal. What I've heard, the McDonald's training program is meant to be really reputable. The way in which they train their staff. What was that like?
Yeah, no, it's all systemized. It's all geniusly created. The speed at which they put food out. They even think about how long it takes a person to make a decision through the drive-through.
Wow.
So it's amazing. But, as soon as someone tells you what to do or puts these confined little boxes, I don't do too well. So I try to mix things up.
So what was the system that you tried to introduce?
Well, in actual fact, what happened was I forgot what they told me. So I just started, it was something to do with pickles, and I couldn't remember, what I was doing.
All problems start with pickles.
Yeah, but it was just like, I was on the counter, and I had to push a button to make a certain thing happen. And I was like, fuck, what was the button again? So I just did it a different way. They had the same outcome. They walked out, and they're like, what are you doing? That's not how we do it. I was like,
So you found yourself in a bit of a pickle.
Yeah, oh, there you're off. Yeah. I noticed you're good with words. So you started saying these like strategic blah blah blah.
Oh,
like
God.
high performing teams. Does that screen out people? Like, what made you choose high performing people and teams? Is it so then you don't have to work with certain people, or it makes them feel entitled? What was the strategic?
Yes, that is a good question. What was the thinking there? Well, it frames in their mind that I do that I am. Let me think.
I'll push the button to change the camera over while you think. And yeah, you're
Do
still
the
going.
what?
Oh, I should have told you before. DSLR cameras, they only go for 30 minutes.
Ah.
So I got to push the button. I'll probably push it again.
Oh, I see. Why did I choose high performing teams? Because I want good clients. And if the people think, yeah, that resonates. Well, actually, it has two effects. One, it gets me good clients because when they hear that, they say, oh yeah, that's our team. I'll work with them. But it also is good from a sales perspective because people think, oh yeah, I'm a high performing individual, or I want to be a high performing individual. I'm going to work with her. So I don't think when I decided on that lingo, it was that thought out. It just sounded good.
Just worked well. It just sounded good.
But actually, I'm not a big fan of using the whole corporate speak. Strategic, all that. I mean, strategic's not particularly corporate, but I'm mindful of using lingo. And this is what I tell my clients of know who you're talking to and use language that's going to resonate with them. So, I don't know. I found that particular phrasing easy to understand and process. And that's actually that's really a good approach. What an interesting group of gentlemen.
Oh, yeah, we live next to the Mission, so there's a lot of homeless people.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the gentleman you're talking. Oh, no,
No, it is.
Oh,
that is street fashion in a nutshell.
Yeah, they look like 50-year-old white rappers. Wearing, to give context, there's basically someone wearing like a kitten beanie, and someone dressed up with like a backpack and like colorful clothes, and yeah, it was interesting.
And frames without any lenses in them.
Legend. Maybe I'm on the podcast.
That's actually reminded me of one of my favorite quotes that is from P.G. Wodehouse, and it's capturing. Well, you can tell what it's capturing. She looked as though she had been poured into her dress and had forgotten to say when.
Oh.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Just so imagery. Oh, anyway.
Well played. Yeah.
What were we talking about?
I don't know. You're going on places, eh?
Yeah, well,
I'm learning about dresses. I didn't plan on it.
Dresses.
Well, let's unpack your story before you find another crowd to focus on.
Okay. Yeah, it is quite distracting. Have a window there and all these interesting people walking past. I love people watching. It's fascinating. Actually, I sometimes get asked if sorry, we're taking this all angles. Feel free to hijack the conversation.
No, I want you to just let loose. So
okay,
this
well,
is good.
all I was going to say is
You're
that
too polished. No one can relate to you.
I've been asked on occasion when I see someone get up to speak in public, whether it's at a conference or in a meeting, whatever, whether I judge them because I am a public speaking coach. And my answer to that is always no, because I mean, like most, if you're looking at someone's financial plan for someone's retirement, you'd naturally have a critical lens through which you analyze that. But for me, it's not about judging that person. It's actually, oh my goodness, good on them for getting up and doing it, because most people aren't. So the fact that people actually getting up there and doing it in the first place is just incredibly commendable. So no, I don't judge people. I don't know where that came out of.
No, I'm just laughing at you looking out the window every 5 minutes.
Yeah. So something just made me think of that.
We'll get places, don't worry.
Okay, so what did you want to talk about?
But I think there's an important distinction you had there, and we'll get to unpacking what led you to be where you're at. But there's difference between judgments and projections. So judgment, objective, person falls over. Oh, you're like they fell over. Projection is, oh, they fell over. I'm judging them. Oh, what a loser.
They're clumsy. They're drunk. Yeah. Okay.
And a projection's a you thing, not a them thing.
Yes. Yeah. But that word judgment, the correct definition is just what you've said, right? It's objective, but it's come to mean judging, and it's actually come to morph with that projection
negative.
term. It's negative.
Well, let's bring you back to the podcast. Tell me. Is this a thing? Is that why you chose speaking coach? Because you need to be so stimulated to like be here, or is it just?
No, this is.
We could just like talk about people walking past.
No,
and we could film it.
She's just interesting. You don't see many people smoking these days. No, take control, Ryan. What do you want to talk about?
You're okay. So you're 5 years old and you're like, you know what? I want to be a performer. Or how did you suddenly decide? And are you doing your dream? If you are, then let's see where it came from. Great.
Let's start with the now, which is the fact that the fact that I am. I'm living the dream.
Yeah.
Recently, as I've been leaving the house to either go to run a client session, to go to a networking event, go to catch up with a client for a coffee or a wine, Daniel yells out, "Remember, you're living the dream." And I'm like, that's so true. I have my dream job. I've just returned from 2 weeks of holiday from Perth, and coming back, I'm like, oh, I'm so ready to get back to work. Who says that? That is bizarre. And look, I am young. I won't tell you how old, but to have realized that so early on in my career is just incredible. So I'm pinching myself every day. I have my dream job. I'd be doing this even if I wasn't getting paid for it. Just don't tell my clients that. Please still pay me. And it's great. So backtrack to upbringing and 5 years old, or however you want to look at it. I grew up in Tauranga. I'm the youngest of 3 kids. My dad was or is a doctor. My mum was a full-time mum, stay at home. She was great at that, incredibly maternal, great upbringing, very loving, supportive. We did the whole piano lessons, singing lessons, speech and drama lessons, which is where this really started for me, was through speech and drama. Speech and drama sounds quite theatrical. It's more training you as a child to get used to speaking in front of a group. It teaches you enunciation and confidence and all that kind of stuff. And yes, it does have that drama element to it, but it's also about speech and elocution as well, which sounds very poncy, but it wasn't at all like that. So that was
elocution.
Yeah,
never heard that in my life.
Oh yeah. So that was in essence what I was involved in at school was music and speech and drama, and a dabble of sport. I think I wanted to be a teacher for a long time. That was because my mum used to be a teacher, and I loved kids, and I've always loved kids. And I would be that kid that would go and seek out other children and kind of look after them at various occasions. Towards the end of high school, I started to think that I'd get into performing arts. Maybe I'd do a performing arts degree and in musical theatre or whatever. I'm so glad that didn't work out, because I think it's very challenging for those that turn their hobbies into a career. Now, even now, I still play the piano often. I have a piano at my home. I play at the odd event. I play for friends. If there's a piano in a restaurant, I'll go and sit down and start playing. That means that I play for enjoyment, not because I have to earn a buck from doing it. And I'm so glad that that is the case. I've got friends who were fantastic musicians at school, got scholarships to go to study music at university. It completely sucked the joy out of them for them, and they bailed, and now they don't touch an instrument because they can't stand it. So that was the thinking. So I didn't go down to musical theatre. I actually didn't know what I wanted to do when I left high school, so I took a gap year. I went over to England. I worked in a private girls' day school in Surrey as a music teacher assistant. So this was under a gap year scheme. By the way, if anyone the age of 18 is listening to this, or anyone has kids that are approaching the end of high school, the best thing, and obviously we all have our own judgments on this, but from personal experience and even from the conversations I've had with other young adults, the best thing that you can do as a high school graduate is go and take a gap year. What 18-year-old really knows what they want to do when they leave school? And even if they do, that's great. Why not take a year out, go and get some independence, experience life, and have to fend for yourself. I'm so grateful for that experience. And being the youngest of three, I know that my brother and my sister probably thought or wished that they had done that. So I was just very fortunate that I happened to be the youngest child and had that opportunity. Around that time, so I was working in that school, obviously traveling a bit during the year. I was starting to think about, okay, well, this gap year is going to come to an end. I'm going to go home. I've got to start doing something with my life. At that point, I was getting reasonable pressure from my dad to study law. Law is a great, solid, dependable, traditional path. And look, I completely admire, I've got many friends that are lawyers, and it is, but I think I had a distorted view about what law was actually going to be like. I imagined myself as a bit of a Meghan Markle, being off suits, being in the courtroom, giving speeches in the courtroom and being, all that glamorous side of stuff, which is not the case at all for anyone that studied it. So what I ended up doing is I actually applied to study law in Cambridge, at Cambridge University in the UK, got round to the final interview and went through with that. And then I came back to New Zealand having had that interview and waiting to hear the results as to whether I'd been successful and accepted into Cambridge. I remember the night I was due to find out, and because of the time zone difference, it was quite late, and I was staying up and I was lying in bed waiting for the ding of my phone with the email notification about whether I'd been successful or not. And I was waiting and waiting, and then finally, ding, and I checked my phone, and I just saw the first few words, and it said, "Dear Miriam, we regret to inform you, you haven't been accepted." And I just put my phone down and I cried. Because at this stage, I thought that's what I was convinced that was the path for me. Obviously, I know now that that's not the case. But I cried and I cried and I cried. And then the next morning, I was over it. I was okay. And I think that's the way I've wired. I've always had this ability to get over things quite quickly and just move forward. So that was interesting. I ended up studying law in Auckland, which that was okay. It was fine. I actually had my first panic attack, my one and only ever panic attack in my law exam.
Oh yeah.
Whoa, my
Good
goodness.
time.
It's for anyone that's had a panic attack before, it was an unreal experience. And anyway, I studied for law for the first year. It was fine, but then realized, no, this is not for me. Then I moved to, this is obviously, I'm giving you my life story here, so please feel free to jump in. But moved to AUT to do communications, majored in public relations. And parallel to that, I was involved in Toastmasters. So bear in mind that by this stage, I've done a lot of speaking at school. I've done a lot of piano at school. So I'm very used to getting up in front of an audience, performing, to use your words. I remember there was this one assignment at university where it was a presentation assignment, and I thought, oh yes, easy credits, great. And I was looking around wondering why my classmates were having so much difficulty with it, because I just had that skill set in place. At the same time, I was getting involved with Auckland Toastmasters, eventually became president of Auckland Toastmasters, and through that was asked to run a couple of corporate workshops for various organizations. That made me realize there's a market for this. No, Toastmasters kind of is servicing that individual professional development, but no one's really tapped into the corporates here. So that was the start of it, basically. So I was working at the time as an executive assistant at Saatchi & Saatchi.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which is very different, obviously, to what I do. And
well, then you get that lawyer glamorous part without having to be a lawyer. Don't you?
well, no,
Or
so
is it not glamorous?
no. So Saatchi & Saatchi is advertising.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, advertising.
Why have I? Okay.
Well, it probably the double barrel, sounds like a law firm is the.
No, I thought they were a fashion brand. Oh,
No, advertising.
wow,
Yeah,
I'm knowledgeable.
no, it's okay. So well, the thing is, if you don't,
Great injection.
you don't know until you know. So yeah, assistant at Saatchi & Saatchi, which was felt like I was living a double life, because here I was turning up to work, making other people look good, making things happen behind the scenes, and then after work I would go into these corporates and run these workshops up the front as the key person. Fast forward, I started opening my offering to one-on-one coaching. That took off, and then my time at Saatchi was a contract, so that was always coming to an end. Then thought, right, let's give this a shot. All in, naked audience, here we go. And 2.5 years later, here we are.
Wow, 2.5.
Yeah.
So you didn't fold. That's good.
No,
The
no.
2-year mark's not easy.
Yeah, over COVID as well.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
speaking. Yeah. Wow. Let's. So you've had this all very polished life, comfortable.
What is this?
childhood.
What you like this word polish? You've used
Yeah.
it like 5 times. Why do you say that? What is your idea of polish?
Well, I just think you're a very conscious communicator that's probably
Okay.
developed over the years of drama
Mhm.
and whatnot. And I personally, and it could just be completely wrong,
Go for it.
find it harder to connect and relate with you because it's all so well thought out, so polished.
I think we're relating.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you say?
yeah, we're getting there.
Okay. That's
See, like that. That's a beautiful break from it. A glimpse.
Yeah, it's interesting but communication, in theory, the better communicator you are, the better you can connect with people.
Yeah, but depends what you're communicating. So here's me not knowing your expertise.
Go for it.
But essentially, it's like they were saying, people remember how you made them feel.
Mm.
So if we're in an environment where we're completely safe, exposed, and comfortable with each other's vulnerability, that's a level of connection. Even if we're communicating poorly, there's going to be a certain level of connection. So that's I'm a bit real. Like, my obsession is people and understanding them, and I like to think building trust and helping them feel safe to be themselves is kind of the superpower. And that's just what I hear is like, if I was either a young woman, young man listening to this and seeing this person that's had such a well-rounded life and sort of things just unfolded, it's harder for me with my own emotional challenges and fears and doubts to connect with you.
Okay.
So give us some mess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go on.
So, well, correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is the narrative that I just shared with you
It's too perfect.
is very clean.
Yeah.
And And look, that we do tend to that was the simplified version, right? So naturally, I'm going to tie things together, and we tend to say things like, and then this led to this, and then this led to this, and then because of that, I am the first to admit I have been fortunate in the way things have unfolded. Can I be completely honest?
Go.
I have not had any major obstacle.
Yeah.
And that sounds crazy, but it's and I'm so acutely aware of it that I think, and this is not the way the world works, but I think I'm due for one. But it's just things have happened, okay. And look, I think the reason for that is because very early on, and this almost goes back to our initial conversation, I knew that I couldn't get ahead, or people are the magic ingredient. And so I, all through the process of starting Naked Audience and trying to build my client base, I was seeking input from left, right, and center, mostly from people, but also from resources. I was upskilling myself. And because I equip myself with people around me, it was almost like the burdens, if you can call it that, or just the challenge of starting a business was spread across this group of people that were my trusted advisors. So no, I haven't had any like catastrophic failure that I can glamorously talk about because it makes a good story. It has been a little bit next step, which has all gone reasonably smoothly, but that's just was what happened. But as I said, I am a believer that the reason for my success, if you want to call it that, it's certainly in my mind what I want it to be, although obviously growing and developing continuously, is been because of people and people that have supported me and people that I've found there or sought out their input. So yeah, no, unfortunately, no catastrophic failures that I can bring to the forefront. However, when it happens, I will let you know, and we will have a part B to this podcast, and I'll be like, Ryan, I've lost all my money. My reputation is in the mud. Let's hope not.
Well, I mean, to be fair, life and business is easy. The hard part's just you within that life and business.
What do you mean by that?
Well, essentially, like make more money than you lose in business, and you got a business. Build a network with people that can help feed that business, do your best with the clients, and charge a fair price for the services that you provide, and make sure the systems are all set up to support that. It's not complicated. Like losing weight, I'm a big boy. Essentially, all I need to do is eat less and exercise more. For the most part, there's some exceptions. Life's pretty simple.
Simple, not easy.
Not easy,
isn't it? True.
Well, what makes it hard? People die, you get sick, you lose a job. Maybe, I lived in a tent for a year and a half.
Wow.
I had $10 a week on food.
Amazing.
And it was easy.
What were you doing? What would you do for food?
There'll be chickpeas, five bean mix can, and then like canned tomatoes, pasta,
You've
oats.
probably talked about this in a previous episode, but can you briefly give me the rundown on how that happened?
Well, essentially, I want to do whatever I want when I want, so I only had to work 8 weeks over a few years and just met girls, did drugs, traveled, did whatever the fuck I wanted. And I could die and not care because I've lived such a colourful life.
Where were you at this stage?
Well, for a lot of it, I was in a hippie community.
Where?
In Byron Bay.
Okay.
In the Arts Factory. It was called The Jungle.
Wow.
It's a tent community inside a hostel.
Amazing.
And yeah, that's essentially surfed, partied, didn't avoided responsibility.
Yeah.
I
bet you did some. Well, I was going to say I bet you did some growing up in that time, but maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's the, regressing to no responsibility. But I'm sure that experience gave you some incredible perspective.
Yeah, I just learned how unfulfilling it is being able to do whatever you want when you want. I think the most important.
Wait, hold on. Unfulfilling to do what you want when you want. So the structure is unfulfilling, or the lack of structure or the lack of purpose?
Yeah, a lack of purpose and connection. I think that's the recipe for nearly everything aside from your own, individual sovereignty and understanding yourself. Purpose and people. As much as I don't like networking, people are giving me every success in life, not just financial but emotional. So I was, thought meeting these new people, doing these fun things, not worrying about, ejecting from the system, doing whatever. I thought that was the answer, and then it's not. And even Mike Tyson said this. People think a lot of money will make them happy, but that's because people haven't had a lot of money. I just personally, even though it's hard, even though it's challenging, picking something that is your purpose or a piece of it and holding that responsibility is nothing more fulfilling.
Yeah, excellent. And I like the fact that you've distinguished between purpose and passion, because personally I think the idea of a passion is a bit overrated. The idea of passion wasn't even really introduced until the 70s, where people started talking about, this is my passion, this is my passion. It came out through a book. What was it called? It was a self-help book. What Color is Your Parachute, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And that kind of introduced that term into our vernacular, and people start talking about their passions. But actually, job satisfaction comes through autonomy, which you get through mastery, and having good relationships with the people that you work with. In other words, choose something. Yes, you should choose something that is consistent with your natural skill set. So I'm never going to become a financial planner. I'm never going to become a mathematician. So I'm going to then narrow that potential field of opportunity down into, okay, well, it's probably going to be people orientated. It's going to be communication orientated. It's probably going to have some performance element to it. And once you've narrowed that skill set down, just choose something.
Yeah.
And then get really, really good at it so that you're basically the best in the game. And then with that, you get mastery and you get autonomy, and hopefully in turn build some relationships on the way. So I think where a lot of young people are going wrong at the moment is they have been sold this idea of just follow your passion. But when the going gets tough, what's there to support that? Like I was talking about my friends taking those music scholarships. What's left if this is it? So why not ask yourself, well, just because I don't pursue this professionally doesn't mean I can't still enjoy it. I've got a dear friend of mine who is, aiming to become a professional actor because he loves acting, and that's hard. And he's having to confront some serious things like, is this going to work out, or do I need to have do I need to have a backup plan? So I think if you can have that interest or passion as something that you have outside of work, because we all need some interest, we all need hobbies outside of work. In fact, you probably have a better idea of this than me, but people that retire can really struggle in their retirement because they don't have interests outside of work.
They die faster.
They die faster.
I know that's a bit of a theme at the moment. I don't know why I'm
It's a
focusing on death.
Death, yeah.
But they do, they die quicker. A lot of men really struggle because their life was work. Just to make generic statements about a generation. But a guy's partner at that age dies. He loses his wife. He just, degrades real quickly, no purpose, no connection. Whereas the girls or women actually thrive almost because they weren't dependent on the man. They might have to explore into the bills thing because it's a bit more traditional, but they've got a network of people that supports them.
Interesting. Huh.
So the actual most important thing about a retirement plan is like, what the hell are you going to do?
Yeah, what are you going to retire to?
Yeah.
So if I had to retire tomorrow, I would
go mad.
No, I wouldn't. Well, actually, that's the thing. I would probably.
I would.
Well, that's the thing. I don't see my work as a job. I would go into. I mean, if I had to give up the corporate side of things, I'd probably do more things with school kids or. I don't know, maybe help, because I think that's where it starts, right? The confidence building starts, and building those communication skills starts when you're at school. Anyway, so yes, passion is overrated. Just get good at something, and then the passion will come.
Yeah, I mean, I find most people are just chasing an emotion. Like medicating with alcohol on the weekend so they can go to the job they hate, looking at their phones so they don't have to feel their feelings. And like, what was this book? Just to stay on the theme of dying. But,
Good.
It's not like, if you listen to the back ones, I don't talk about it much. But this lady was in palliative care. She was a nurse, and she asked people what their biggest regrets were. And essentially, it wasn't taking a chance in their dreams, not being true to themselves. And there was 5 of them, but the other one was pretending to be something they're not.
Wow. Actually, I think I know what you're referring to there. Is that a book about the 5 themes that came up with those patients? That's interesting. Similarly, I was saying earlier that it was impressed upon me the importance of a network. So when I was at university, I was doing this thing called informational interviews, which I made reference to earlier, which is essentially when you contact someone you admire in an industry that you're interested in, and you ask them out for a coffee purely to learn from them. Now, the beauty of doing this as a young person is your hit rate is pretty high because everyone loves helping a young person. It's harder to do as an adult. So I was doing these regularly for years, and I'm still in touch with a lot of the people that I've contacted. But at the end of every conversation with these amazing professionals, I ask them, if you had to go back in time and give your 20-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be? So it's a similar kind of question that you mentioned earlier about life advice or regrets. And funny enough, that was my last question that I asked Sinead Boucher in the interview that I've just come from. Hers and about 80% of the responses I got to that question were around risk taking. Just do it. Back yourself. I should have done this, or I should have trusted my gut more. I should have just gone for it, or just go for it. And that at that time of my life where I was, late teens, early 20s, I was like, well, if I can't listen to the advice of these people who have lived entire professional careers, a lot of them were, 50 plus, and if I can't listen to that gem of just do it, just back yourself, don't second guess yourself, what would it take for me to listen to that advice? Well, nothing. So I better listen. And that has, I think, subconsciously played a huge role in the way I approach life. And I genuinely believe I don't think I care about what people think of me.
Oh.
But we all do to a degree. So I think I'm on the other side of the bell curve of not caring.
Yeah.
So most people, I would say, do. And I think that's become a big part of it, is just hearing this message over and over again from these professionals of varying backgrounds who say, just back yourself. Back yourself. So that's generally the lens through which I approach life. I've got a hell of a lot of confidence. Maybe too much. I don't know. But
That's interesting. Maybe parents should do a book on parenting.
my parents, well, the funny thing is, my mum, she did this course. So I did a life skills and counseling course when I was about 18. And there was lots of little philosophies and gems that came out of that, and that you could almost call them mantras that I still cling to today, like failure isn't fatal, it's merely feedback. Like your worth and value is not in the hands of other people. Those were a couple of the key ones. Anything else? Anyway, so when I did this course, I was like, oh my gosh, Mum, these little philosophies are coming up. That's what you taught us growing up. And she said, well, where do you think I got it from? Because she took the same course when she was a young mother. But I think for Mum, yeah, we've been fortunate in the sense that we've grown up with that instilled in us from the get-go. Whereas I think for a lot of adults, you sometimes have to relearn it or really learn it as an adult. So yeah, I'm incredibly grateful for my upbringing and parenting.
Well, the latest study came out of Dunedin was that if you want to make an impact either on crime or a child's or an adult's life, is you got to get them before the age of 3.
Wow.
After that, you know. And there was also another one where a guy in UK, I think he interviewed 60,000 identical twins, some of them being adopted out, and he's found that a lot of the characteristics of their personality would 50% of it was determined by the genetics.
Oh yeah.
So, and we're close. We've got 8 minutes till the hour mark. Just FYI.
No, we've got 2. It's 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay,
well, the only
precise.
reason, so this is funny, I don't mean to be looking at the time. The reason I'm looking at the time, not because I have a meeting, is because I'm absolutely starving, because I'm doing this thing on a daily basis, which is called time restricted feeding.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not allowed to eat until midday. So it's now getting to 11 a.m.
Should have got you in the afternoon.
And, well, no.
Post-eat.
No, it's good. You're getting me most antsy now, which is probably what you want. But particularly because I woke up early and had this event on this morning, I'm feeling the hunger now. But how do you want to spend these last couple of minutes, Ryan?
Well, I think just whether it's someone listening that's looking to be a high performer that can communicate more effectively in front of people, what would be your lasting point? And then also, how do they find you if they want your help?
Okay, yeah. It's funny, we haven't talked much about the public speaking, which I like. No, it's great. 2 things. Being a good speaker. Well, firstly, if you observe someone that's a great speaker and it looks easy, it probably wasn't. Bear that in mind. 2 things make a great speaker, or 2 things that will set you up to be a great speaker. One is exposure and one is preparation. Exposure, or similarly experience, is about getting up and just starting, seeking out discomfort in the context of public speaking, which is what you were talking about earlier with other pursuits. If it freaks you out, basically do it, in the sense of look for the opportunities to start speaking at meetings, to start volunteering to put your hand up to speak at gatherings, whether it's a wedding, whether it's a birthday. Say yes to that work presentation or to be on the presentation or pitch team. And over time, by doing that over and over again, you will acquire the experience that in many ways demystifies the whole public speaking thing. It's like anything. I mean, I took up rollerblading last summer, which was a terrible idea, but it was so hard when I first did it because I was unfamiliar with it. But like any pursuit, when you do it more and more, it gets easier. Public speaking is no different. It's a skill that you need to learn, and most of the time you learn through doing, and obviously hiring a public speaking coach in the process. And then secondly, so that was exposure. Preparation. Preparation makes the unknowns known. If you know your stuff, if you know what you're going to talk about, if you know how the event or presentation is going to unfold, if you have practiced, if you have rehearsed your ideas, if you've planned for the potential questions that might crop up during the presentation, you're just setting yourself up for success, because that presentation is far more likely to go well and be successful, which will then instill in your mind, oh, this is doable, I can do this. So those 2 things, exposure, seek out the opportunities. Start now. You have to start somewhere, but they can be small opportunities like contributing in meetings, and then build up that experience and tolerance over time. And secondly, when you do get the opportunity to present, just prepare. People that don't prepare and think that they can wing it are, quite frankly, in my mind, deluded, because that's not how it works. You have to prepare. Ironically, neither of us have prepared for this interview.
I never prepare. So
this is a very different situation and setting. So yeah.
And how they find you?
Are those gollywogs?
There's some fucked up shit in here. There's no 2 ways about it.
There's some.
It's called a greedy boy.
Sculptures.
No, it's messed up. Basically, it's blackface people.
Yeah, they're pretty un-PC now, right? I think it's a shame. I mean, we kind of, cultural relativism, we look back and think they were wrong to create those models or those toys, but that was sadly, that was the way the world was. We can't go back and correct that. But
there's 20 of them, and I tried to hide them because it's my business associates.
It's kind of funny. I mean, funny as in like you've got just these random figurines.
Yeah,
in your
there's
office.
a lot happening. I feel like I wasn't.
It's a great office. I'm just looking around. And
it's a mess, to be honest.
An eclectic variety of art and furniture, and
this could hoarder.
And I've been looking at that wooden face for the duration and not really processing what I'm looking at. So, back to the conversation to wrap up. You can find me on LinkedIn, Miriam Chancellor. You can also find me on Instagram, Naked Audience. My personal account is Miriam Ruth Chancellor, but do give me a follow on Naked Audience. LinkedIn's best, though, because I'm pretty prolific on there and doing a lot of stuff. So, Ryan, I really enjoyed this. I've done several podcast interviews. This is the most chilled one I've ever done. So thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, you've done well. Well, you might see her out there having a sandwich too, just to break your thing. All right. Well, thank you. We're done.
Awesome. See you, my friend.